Welcome back to SB Nation. We're talking 2012 college football season with really intelligent people. Of course, Brian Floyd from SB Nation and CougCenter.com, Bill Connolly from Football Study Hall, SBNation.com, and of course, the pre-snap reader himself, Paul Meyerberg. We are talking risers and fallers. Who's going to crap the bed and who's going to be all sorts of comfortable in that same very bed? Let's start with you, Brian. Who's going to rise up?
I think it's less of a rise and more of a not falling as much as you think they will. But Stanford loses Andrew Luck. Everybody thinks that Andrew Luck was the magic key and Stanford will fall off a cliff. But I don't think they're going to fall as far as they would. Stanford is willing, able to run the ball, run their power sets. Kind of Andrew Luck, yes, was absolutely
They're still interested in bloodying people up.
They will beat you to death with an offensive line and then bludgeon you to death with the defense. And that's their game. Even with Andrew Luck gone, they can still compete.
Paul, who does your tail wag for?
I'm going to stick in the Pac-12, and I like Utah.
Okay.
Partly because they have a schedule that's, it's easier than you would think going through that league. You win 8-9 games simply by doing what you're supposed to do. But they can do more because they have a great front seven on defense.
Large, Polynesian,
there's no question.
Angry gentlemen.
And every year there's more, arriving.
Yep.
They run the ball well, and also they're moving away from this West Coast offense they tried last year with Norm Chow, and they're bringing back Brian Johnson. Not bringing him back necessarily, but he was quarterback coach, former quarterback when they beat Alabama back in 08. So they're going to kind of take a page out of the old playbook and simply go in more spread. I think is good for Jordan Wynn, who's playing quarterback, good for their receiver core, and if all goes more than according to plan, if they exceed just a little bit, they could seriously challenge USC for playing for the Pac-12 title.
Bill, who are we looking past?
Well, honestly, Alabama, that's another one where you can't say they're
Look at the limb you are out on.
They started at number one, but I think people are assuming it's either USC or LSU for number one right now.
Right.
Because of what Alabama lost on defense, but they recruit. They recruit really, really well, and the secondary is still going to be amazing. And I think it could be a situation like 2010 where maybe there's a game where youth kind of hurts them in the front seven, but the offense is going to be really good. And really, why stray? They ended last year at number one, and I'm going to go on a huge limb and say Alabama's right.
So could this be a situation where maybe even they lose a game or two, but by the end of the season you feel confident that they're maybe a top 2 or 3 team?
Well, in the SEC especially, you can lose a game. It's not going to hurt you. It hurt them in 2010 because they lost more than one game. So unless there's a Cam Newton sneaking around somewhere in the SEC West this year, I do think they can get away with one loss and be right there at the end.
As much as it pains me to say, I'm going to think Texas, a running game and a defense that goes about 20 deep in a Big 12 that is sort of to be had, I feel pretty good, and it hurts me to say it, but I think they're better than what they're sort of looking at, about 19 to 21. They could be a top 8 team when all is said and done. All right, teams that are free-falling. We'll start with you, Brian.
Staying in the Pac-12, I'm going to go with Washington because I am biased. And
we're in New York right now.
But still.
Show some bias. Okay, Washington.
The Pullman, Washington resident here kind of wants to pick on Washington, but at the same time, Keith Price, his knees seem to always give out, and he can't stay healthy. He's kind of the trigger man on offense, and without Chris Polk and a running game, could be problems. And yes, even though they replaced the entire defensive staff because it was terrible and give up every single point you could to Baylor, there still isn't enough talent on that side of the ball. And
their schedule, by the way,
still
murderous.
Yeah,
LSU, Oregon, Stanford within the first month and a half or so.
If they make it out of that alive, it'll be a minor miracle, and I just can't see them bringing momentum.
And the Aztecs of San Diego State.
The mighty Aztecs.
Do not forget. Bill, who's fallen?
Honestly, and this is, I'm just twisting my own definitions here. I'm going to go with USC.
We're all making things up.
I don't see USC as a top 2 team. I think they're going to be good, but we're basing a lot on the fact that they performed really well for 2 games at the end of the season. They didn't have to prove themselves in a bowl game. They looked really, really good.
Or against Oregon again.
Right. They looked really good against Oregon. They looked really good against UCLA. And otherwise, they were just good. And so I think, they're absolutely top 10. I don't see them as a top 2 team.
It's an interesting pick. Paul?
I think Arkansas is probably a safe pick to be a faller. Considering
their coach has no money.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I was just going to stick with the coach.
Sure. No, obviously, yeah.
You got a coach who needs that paycheck back.
Yes.
So he's going to be pushing. The talent's there, clearly. But beyond the players, they were banking on Petrino going in and finally, tackling those Giants and beating Les Miles and saving. And it's hard to see now with John L. Smith, who, I don't think he strikes a lot of confidence in people. Just generally in a big picture, it's hard to see Arkansas matching the 10-win expectations and maybe even that national title hopes that they had prior to.
Top 8 coach John L. Smith just does not sound perfect.
Their defense is still very average, and they're
Yep.
just a huge step backwards
Right.
from Alabama and LSU. And if they're a step backwards from them, how are they supposed to win?
They were banking on Petrino drawing plays up in the dirt, and now
Yes.
John L. Smith is
Absolutely.
drawing in the dirt. I mean,
The
no
dirt.
offense, he's a
Yes.
fine coach and he's earned this opportunity.
seems like a very
but
enjoyable
it's
human
not. Yeah. He's probably
That was really passive aggressive, Bill. I did not like that. Okay, it's okay.
tough enough for the
Quickly, my follower is Florida State for a very similar reason why I like Texas to rise up. But I think Florida State thinks E.J. Manuel can lead that team to 11 or 12 wins, and he very much cannot. So I've watched Florida State play, and I know they cannot. So that is my pick. Let us know who you think is going to be better than expected to start the season, who is going to be worse and fall miserably in the comments. Subscribe up above. These people are smart. We'll see you soon.